What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another fantasy football video. Really excited to make this one today, top 5 quarterbacks to draft late, and I'm excited for this one because it ties perfectly into the strategy I use in almost every single draft. Basically, I never draft quarterbacks early. There's a rare occasion where I'll take like the 4th or 5th best quarterback, or maybe the 1st best if they fall dramatically, but almost every single time, I am not drafting the first quarterback, and I'm not drafting anyone really in the top 6 because I don't think the value is there. You look at the other videos I've made, look at the mock drafts, look at maybe when you're watching this, we'll have the video on quarterback draft strategy, and it just ties in perfectly. I always draft quarterbacks 9th round or later. So these are the top 5 guys I seem to be drafting in mock drafts, or I really want to draft in mock drafts, guys that I'm targeting late when I'm taking skill position players early. So, before we hop into that, I just wanted to give you guys a huge update. Super pumped about this. Finally, after a ton of back and forth, I got you guys a discount code off of Pro Football Focus for this season, and then it counts towards the draft season for their player grades for the draft players next year. It's 10% off the Elite version, or it's 12.5%. It works out, it's just $5 off. But 12.5% off of the Edge version of their subscription. Guys, like, I know that I'm pushing my website. You can look at that in the link below in the description box. But obviously Pro Football Focus is a much better website than the one I put together. I have rankings, I have some articles, and we'll be posting articles during the year. But Pro Football Focus is the most respected website for this kind of stuff. I mean, NFL teams use Pro Football Focus to look at players. Like, it's not just a fantasy site. They have fantasy, and they have a huge fantasy section. But it's not just fantasy. It's also used for football. Like, their grades are very, very accurate. NFL teams rely on that. So I highly recommend getting one of these. Now, do I recommend Edge or Elite? Honestly, I recommend Edge because I'm poor. I'm a poor college student. So I'm not going to tell you guys to go out there and buy the Elite version. Obviously, if you can get the Elite version, you have the money to do it. I mean, by no means am I telling you not to do it. I'm giving you $20 off that. But listen, I think the Edge would do just fine. The biggest thing it gives you, the premium rankings that they have, it gives you access to their premium fantasy articles for both DFS and season long during the year. But one big thing that I wanted to point out that you also get with both versions is the second to last thing you see on the Edge. The weekly cornerback matchup chart, O-line fantasy stats. You can get the handcuff index. I'm not sure how useful that is. I can tell you guys who the handcuffs are. And shadow coverage matrix. Those are huge during the year. It's really huge for daily fantasy. Like, if you play DraftKings, you really want this. But even if you're not playing daily fantasy, this helps you make your start-sit decisions. Because, I mean, I don't know shadow coverages very well. Like, I can help you guys out, but I don't know the shadow coverages. These guys are really good at predicting these things. So if you want to know who's going to be shadowing certain players, what cornerbacks will be matched up, what grade each cornerback has, how much the offensive line is better or worse when people are injured. Like, this is what you want. You want access to this site. Now, that's all with the Edge. With the Elite, you get more. I mean, you get signature stats. They're huge. I mean, some of the stats that they have on there really help you distinguish players. But I'd say it's more for DFS. Like, if you play DFS and you have the money to get the Elite, that's what I would do. Because you're getting the optimizer. You're getting more positional breakdowns for players. You're getting a CSV export, which I use for daily projections and stuff. That just basically means you can get it into Excel, kind of like I showed you guys for the RotoViz website. This allows you to do it for their stuff. And then you get their private Facebook group and member bonuses there. So if you have the money and you play daily fantasy and you want an Edge, get the Elite. But if you are on a budget like I am, I really do recommend getting Pro Football Focus Edge because it's going to put you ahead of everyone else in your league. I'm giving you a percentage off. I'm giving you 12.5% off this thing, which is definitely the best I can do. I could not go any further than that. But also, don't be stupid and just go buy it. Like, use the link I have in the description and then use the promo code I have on the screen. Don't just go to their website and buy it and wonder where your discount is. Well, you have to do it in a process, so you're not going to get the discount. It's kind of like when I refer people to DraftKings, like, you have to follow the link or else you're not going to get the discount. So go to the description box, follow the link, use the promo code I have on the screen and in the description box down below and get yourself a great subscription to a great website. Alright, now on to the top 5 video. Top 5 quarterbacks to draft late this season. We are starting off at number 5 with Andy Dalton. Every single year, no one's high on Andy Dalton. He's always that quarterback that you missed on everyone else, you finish with, and you're like, ah, man, I got Andy Dalton. Well, you really shouldn't be saying that, because he finished last season as a quarterback 1. Okay, he was Pro Football Focus's 11th rated quarterback, 10th in adjusted completion percentage, and he did that in large part without either AJ Green or Tyler Eifert. They combined to miss 14 games, but together on the field, they only actually played 3 weeks. So he had quarterback 1 numbers, and yet he was out AJ Green to end the year and Tyler Eifert to begin the year. Put them both on the field at the same time. Add a deep threat in John Ross. Do I think John Ross is like a prolific wide receiver? No, I really don't, and I think him and Eifert are injury risks. But if I'm throwing injuries out the door because I'm not going to project injuries for John Ross in my Andy Dalton analysis. So I think that he's a great deep. I think he's going to be a great deep threat. I don't think he's a great wide receiver. I think he's going to be a great deep threat, and that'll stretch the field. It'll open things up for Joe Mixon in the passing game. It'll open things up for AJ Green down below. It'll open things up for Eifert. Eifert coming back hugely helps his touchdown numbers because Eifert's a monster in the red zone. Is Eifert going to get 1,000 yards? No. But he could get 15 touchdowns. So the offensive line is probably the one thing that people throw at Andy Dalton and say, oh, the offensive line is bad. I think that hurts Mixon more than it hurts Dalton because even if the offensive line is bad, he can dump it to Mixon. He can dump it to players. So I'm not concerned about the offensive line play. He's going to exceed quarterback 17 value. I think he's going to finish roughly in the 11 to 14 range, which is great when you're sitting there in the 12th round. You haven't found value everywhere. People were reaching on quarterbacks, but you locked up your skill position players early. Maybe you grabbed Travis Kelce, who I'm really high on this year, and your team is solid. Then you add Andy Dalton, who has shown us top 5 upside in recent years. If everyone comes back healthy, I think he could be like a middle range quarterback 1, but I think low end quarterback 1 is what you're getting, and it's going to be a consistent guy who's really not going to have dud weeks. So that's my take on Andy Dalton. He's number 5 because he isn't my favorite on this list. I love the 4 players in this list before him. So if there was one player where I'd say maybe he won't be on a ton of my teams, it's him. But the rest of these guys, including number 4 and Jameis Winston, they're going to be on a lot of my teams. So Jameis comes in, and people, I feel like, forget how young he is. He was 21 as a rookie, 22 last year. Now he's 23. The dude's really young, and he still threw for over 4,000 yards his rookie and sophomore season. He went from 22 to 28 passing touchdowns, and I think that can go up to maybe the 30 to 33 range this year. That's where I would look for him to be, because he's going to develop. Mike Evans is developing with him. They brought in Deshaun Jackson to stretch the field. They brought in O.J. Howard in the draft, who, again, watch the video on rookie tight ends. We're not drafting O.J. Howard in fantasy football, but he's a good football player, especially in the blocking game. He is a great blocker. So you add a guy who's a red zone threat, who's a good blocker. You add a deep threat down the field. You already have Mike Evans. Everything's coming together for Winston to have his breakout year. Because I think you could argue he broke out, but I mean, I would not say that he has had a breakout year. I think this could be his year. So going in the 9th round, quarterback 11, that is completely fine. I always talk about quarterbacks being overdrafted sometimes. You can draft him as quarterback 11. You can draft him as quarterback 9. I will draft him in the 9th round, and I don't draft quarterbacks early. Now, that's not early, because this is like a late round video, but I'm saying if you really like Jameis Winston, and quarterbacks are flying off the board and you're in maybe the 8th round, I'm fine with it. I am fine with taking him in the 8th round because I truly believe he's going to give you good numbers. The one concern with him, which is why he's 4th on this list and not higher, is that their defense improved towards the end of last season. They wanted to establish a run game at certain points, so there were times where Winston wasn't used as much and wasn't need to be used as much. I think their defense has improved, so maybe they don't need him to air it out a ton. But I think that the team has improved on offense enough to where we can trust him for around that 4,200 yard range. Again, lower 30s in touchdowns, and I think that's going to crack into the quarterback one conversation. Definitely conversation, but I think that cracks into quarterback one for sure, which is why he's on this list. Next, another guy that has been dragged through the mud a little bit, kind of like Andy Dalton, it's Phillip Rivers. Number one complaint that I hear about Phillip Rivers is the schedule, and I get it. Ideally, and this is why I say that this needs to be thrown out the window a little bit. Ideally, you trade for him around mid-season because his early schedule is difficult. But the thing is, you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to trade for him mid-season. So if you're drafting someone else saying, oh, I'll trade for Phillip Rivers, well, maybe the guy that drafted him looks at the schedule and realizes, yeah, he's been playing bad, but he's got some really nice matchups coming up, so I'm going to keep him. Well, now you have to give up more than his draft value was, and it just isn't worth it. So I like Phillip Rivers. You take a guy who's finished 6th, 12th, 12th, and 14th, and you're getting him 13th. Well, okay, that seems extremely fair to me. He finished quarterback 14 last season. You're like, oh, well, there was a dip. Okay, that was without Keenan Allen. We're expecting Keenan Allen to be back. Remember, I'm not projecting injuries with this. He's had over 4,200 yards and 29 or more touchdowns 4 consecutive seasons. So now you take Allen's back. He also has the 7th overall pick in Mike Williams. He's also got Tyrell Williams. Remember, I'm high on Tyrell Williams. I think he's a great red zone threat. So, will they run the ball with Melvin Gordon in the red zone? Sure, yeah, of course they will. But I think this offense is going to be able to put points together, even in these tough matchups early in the year, to where he'll be worth owning and worth starting early, and then late, that's when he can get you into the playoffs, and that's when he can win you playoff games. Remember, the playoffs are not in the first couple weeks, and there really aren't injuries in the first couple weeks, so your rosters are pretty much set. You don't need your quarterback to just dominate, so there shouldn't be many injuries. There shouldn't be many bye weeks early in the year, at least those first couple weeks, where you don't need Phillip Rivers to go out there and get you 30. If you guys draft a really good team and in the 10th round draft Rivers, your starters should be dominating early to where Rivers only needs to get you 20 points, which I think he can do early in the season. So regardless of how tough the matchup is, I think he's got the weapons to put up some good numbers. And that's why I like him in the 10th round. 13th quarterback off the board. I'll take that every time. But the two guys that I love and seem to be on every one of my teams, if you watch these mock draft videos, is Kirk Cousins and then the number 1. But Kirk Cousins, 9th round quarterback 10. That is just great value. Am I saying I'm ranking Kirk Cousins 5th? No, I'm not. But would I rather have Kirk Cousins in the 9th round or even Aaron Rodgers in the 4th? Oh, it's Kirk Cousins in the 9th. The value is just so great. Pro Football Focus's 3rd rated quarterback last season. 3rd in completion percentage, over 2.6 seconds or more. So when he's given time, he is very good, and he was very good regardless of if he had time. He's finished 8th and 5th in the last 2 seasons, and he's going 10th. How much sense does that make? He didn't have a starting receiver over 6 feet tall last season. Remember, the starting receivers were Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, and Jamison Crowder. Crowder is pretty much a top 5 slot receiver in the league at this point. He is an elite slot wide receiver. So you keep him, you keep the chemistry with him. You bring in a healthy, as of now, Jordan Reed. You bring in a 6'4" Terrell Pryor. You bring back from injury a 6'4" Josh Doxson. Remember, he had like 2 receptions for 60-something yards last year. Now you've got red zone weapons. You've got receivers who can make up for the losses. I think Kirk Cousins could lead the league in passing yards this year. I really think, honestly, if I had to pick one person, it would probably... I'm really not even sure who I'd pick over him at this point. Because Brady could be a guy, but I think they're going to run the ball a little bit more. You could pick Breeze, but, I mean, he lost weapons. I'm not sure Breeze can go over 5,000 ahead of Cousins. So now you're thinking maybe Rodgers goes ahead of him, but if I'm picking a sleeper, it's not even a sleeper really, but if I'm picking someone that other people aren't going to pick to go over 5,000 yards, it's Kirk Cousins. And I think the touchdowns, he sees positive touchdown regression. he only had 25. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. I think he goes up to maybe like 35 passing touchdowns. Could hit 5,000 yards, which at quarterback 10 in the 9th round, that's just insane value with how you're able to build your team before that. But the best value, and the guy that I seem to be getting in like every mock draft I do, is Tyrod Taylor. Quarterback 18. This is Fantasy Football Calculator. I'm not throwing up ESPN stats where it's like, oh, that's going to rise. This is people who are legitimately trying in these mock drafts. Like ESPN, sometimes people don't try early on. His ADP has been stagnant. It has not moved up. Some guys who you thought were huge values have moved way up in drafts. He is not moving. And I don't get it. 12th round for Tyrod Taylor. Finished 14th and 8th the past 2 seasons. Like last season, okay, he finished 8th. He didn't have Sammy Watkins for half the year. And part of the games where he had him, he was hurt. He was trying to play through an injury. So, is he going to lead the league in passing? No. Obviously, he's not going to lead the league in passing. But when you get a guy who's going to have 500 to 600 rushing yards, which is a 4-point floor every single week, that sounds small. But I know that some of you play daily fantasy, and you know, this guy, think about it. Let's say he's 5,500 in DraftKings, which he would never would be. But I'm saying he's a low-end DraftKings player. He's cheap, which means you can build the rest of your roster. Well, that's the same thing for season long. You're getting him in the 12th round, which means the rest of your roster is dominant and you got some flyers. And now you're getting a guy who's got a 4-point floor every week in rushing. Now he's going to throw for some touchdowns. Now he's going to run for some touchdowns. Now he's got some passing yardage upside certain weeks. I just think he's a very, very safe option, and he has upside. We just saw him be quarterback 8 with no Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is a very, very, very good receiver. If Watkins is healthy, if McCoy stays healthy, and he continues this 500-600 rushing yard season averages, like, that's insane. Insane value at quarterback 18. This is why I don't get why people draft quarterbacks early. Because if you're telling me I can get Rodgers in the 4th round, or I can wait until the 12th and I can get Tyrod Taylor, and honestly, it's 13th sometimes, 14th sometimes. It's a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer for me. And you guys have heard me say it before, so I'm not going to keep going over this. But these are the guys that I'm drafting. It's Tyrod, it's Cousins, it's Rivers. Those are the main guys I'm drafting. But you can throw the other 2 in just as well. That's going to end it for this video. Remember, guys, put yourself ahead of the field. It's $40 for an Edge membership for the year. I'm giving you 12.5% off of that. $5 off. It's $35 for the entire year plus the draft season next year. It's an insane membership. You're getting so many articles and rankings and stats that it's beyond worth it. But that is the end of my rambling for this video. Hope you did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button. If you're new here, subscribe. We got 5 videos a week. But that's the end of this one, and thanks for watching.